You are in a meeting. A colleague raises their voice. Words sharpen into blades, anger fills the room, and all eyes shift toward you. At home, the same may happen. A family member bursts out, frustration pouring like a storm. To be yelled at is universal. It pierces the skin, rattles the chest, and demands a reaction. Few things shake us as much as another human voice rising in fury. We underestimate the power of tone. A sharp word spoken softly may fade, but shouted, it strikes deeply. Volume carries judgment. It says you have failed, that you are under attack, that defense is required. This is why yelling overwhelms reason. A simple disagreement becomes a battlefield of the mind. Think of the workplace. A manager dissatisfied with results hurls accusations. You feel the weight of every word pressing against you. The urge to defend rises quickly, perhaps to justify, perhaps to lash out. Yet even silence feels painful. To withdraw can seem like surrender, as though dignity is stripped away. In such moments, the mind is torn between retaliation or collapse. Neither offers peace. Now picture the home. A discussion about chores or finances suddenly turns. Voices rise, anger builds, and soon the house echoes with hostility. What began small becomes personal. The raised voice feels like an attack on identity. The place meant for safety becomes filled with noise. This too is familiar, a daily reality for many. Or look at public life. A driver cuts you off, honks, yells through the window. A stranger at a store loses patience and raises their voice. These incidents last seconds, but ignite the same fire inside. Our bodies cannot distinguish between danger and insult. The heart races, muscles tighten, thoughts scatter, instincts engage as if life were threatened. Instinct is uncomplicated. What makes yelling so hard is not the sound itself, but the meaning we attach to it. To be yelled at feels like being declared unworthy. The voice carries the sentence, "You are wrong, you are failing, you are guilty." That message lingers long after silence returns. We replay the words, rehear the tone, relive the sting. In these moments, anger and fear meet. The one yelling is consumed by anger. The one listening is seized by fear. Both are trapped in reaction. Reason is displaced. Impulse rules. Once that happens, the cycle feeds itself. A loud word sparks another. One harsh reply begets another. Soon the original issue is forgotten. What remains is conflict for its own sake. This raises the deeper question: how should we respond when placed under verbal fire? If instinct drives us to fight or fall silent, is there a third path? A way to keep dignity without fueling the flames? Here the Stoic tradition offers an answer. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminded himself that the mind must guard against disturbance. External events cannot wound us unless we allow them to. The raised voice of another is one such event. It is outside our control. Our judgment about it belongs to us. So the challenge is clear. When anger is directed at us, can we remain steady? Can we refuse to mirror fury? Can we preserve clarity of mind while words are hurled like weapons? That is the test, and it leads to the guiding question: what would Marcus Aurelius do? If he were in the meeting where tempers flare, or in the home where quarrels erupt, how would he meet the storm without losing himself? This is not a question of history, it is a question for now, and it opens the path to the Stoic way of facing human fury. Why does being yelled at strike so deeply? The roots run into several layers. To see why raised voices cut more sharply than calm disagreement, we must examine the mind, the body, and the social ties that bind people. Only then can we see why the Stoic approach is essential. Judgment and ego. At the core, yelling feels like judgment. It declares inadequacy, suggesting our actions fall short. The human ego is fragile even in the strongest. We build identity on respect, belonging, and competence. When someone raises their voice, this foundation trembles. It is as if they are shouting, "You have failed." Because ego is tied to social survival, Such judgment is not easily dismissed. The wound cuts into our sense of worth. Biological reaction. There is also physiology. The body treats sharp tones as threats. Across millennia, sound has signaled danger. Heart rate rises, breath shortens, muscles tighten, blood flows to prepare for fight or flight. This reaction is automatic. That is why yelling feels physical as well as emotional. It shakes composure before thought intervenes. Stoics remind us impressions arrive suddenly, but what matters is whether we accept or challenge them. Power and control. Another layer is social. A raised voice is rarely neutral. It is an attempt to impose control, to seize ground in a hierarchy. In families, workplaces, or among strangers, yelling says, "I dominate, you submit." Humans are sensitive to rank, so the imbalance unsettles us. Losing position feels unsafe. The Stoic knows such dominance is illusion, for no one rules another's mind. Yet without training, the raised voice tricks us into surrendering calm. Misinterpretation. There is also distortion. Sometimes people yell not from hatred but from stress, fatigue, or fear. The volume may conceal anxiety more than malice, yet we often interpret shouting as hostility. This misreading deepens the wound. We absorb blame never intended, or assume an enemy where only confusion exists. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to see others as acting from ignorance or weakness, not deliberate evil. By doing so, he preserved clarity and refused to let anger govern him. Together, these layers explain why yelling rattles more than calm words. It strikes the ego, triggers the body, disturbs balance, and confuses perception. Small wonder composure slips so easily. The challenge is not to endure noise, but to govern what happens inside once it reaches us. Here lies the bridge to Stoicism. For Stoics, the external world is filled with impressions that appear powerful yet hold no real power unless we consent. A raised voice is one such impression. It may seem threatening, it may feel destabilizing, but it remains external. What is within our grasp is judgment. How we interpret the event, what story we tell ourselves, and what response we choose. To regain calm, both body and mind must be addressed. The body can be steadied by awareness, slowing breath, resisting the urge to strike back. The mind must be trained to pause, to see the event not as judgment on worth, but as sound outside us. Stoicism does not deny the sting of yelling. It places it in proportion. The practical question follows: if yelling weighs on so many levels, can we truly meet it with equanimity? The Stoic answer is yes, through discipline, reflection, and practice. The roots of the problem show the depth of disturbance, but also why Stoic training is indispensable. When the next shout comes, as it surely will, the difference between turmoil and calm rests not in another's volume, but in the steadiness of our own mind. And this leads directly to the next inquiry. How would Marcus Aurelius face such moments in the modern world? Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations that we are disturbed not by things, but by our judgments about them. Apply this to modern settings and the meaning becomes clear. It is not the raised voice itself that shakes us, but the interpretation we place upon it. The noise is external, but the story we tell ourselves, "I am humiliated, I am diminished, I am under attack," is internal. The Stoic task is to separate these layers and act from clarity rather than impulse. In the workplace. If yelled at in a meeting, Marcus would begin by questioning the impression. What is this noise? It is only sound. Does it change my character? No. By asking such questions, he would stop the mind from collapsing into automatic reaction. His first move would be to pause, to steady the breath, to let the impression pass before it hardens into judgment. Calmness is not passivity but control. It is mastery over impulse. Proof that dignity does not depend on volume or hierarchy. From there, response becomes measured. Instead of raising his voice or retreating, Marcus would choose words guided by reason. He would address the content, not the tone. He would remember that the raised voice reveals more about the speaker's state than about his own worth. By refusing to mirror anger, he protects his integrity and the environment around him. Calmness becomes contagious. Others notice and tension subsides. At home. In quarrels at home, the challenge feels sharper because emotions run deeper with those closest to us. Marcus would remind himself that the shouting partner is not an enemy, but a person overwhelmed by passions they cannot govern. Anger at home often comes from fatigue, frustration, or fear. To treat it as deliberate attack is to add fuel to the fire. His task would not be to absorb insult as truth, but to preserve clarity of mind amid noise. He would reframe the event as an opportunity, a chance to practice patience, to train endurance, to live out virtue. The raised voice becomes a test, not a verdict. In this reframing, calm is not weakness, but strength. The house, once filled with hostility, becomes ground for discipline of the soul. On the street or in public, in the marketplace, on the road, or among strangers, shouting often comes suddenly. Insults may be hurled without cause. Here Marcus would test the deepest level of Stoic discipline. He would remind himself, if words alone can harm me, then I have surrendered my peace too easily. Calmness becomes armor, not denial of reality, but a shield against needless suffering. I'm seeing my own mind, wide open, a ceiling against needless suffering. In public, the temptation to defend reputation is strong. Yet Marcus would know reputation lies outside his control. The opinion of a stranger shouted in anger has no power unless he grants it. His control lies in how he meets the moment, with composure or with surrender to passion. To remain calm is to declare silently that freedom rests within, untouchable by noise. A universal practice across all contexts, workplace, home, street, the Stoic pattern is the same. Recognize yelling as external, refuse to let judgment distort the event, and choose a response that reflects dignity. Marcus would not deny the sting of raised voices, but he would remind himself that the sting is temporary while virtue is lasting. The foundation of calm rests on several Stoic principles. They are not abstract ideals to admire from afar, but practical guides to be lived in moments of tension. When a voice is raised against us, these principles are not theory, they are tools. They help us stay steady when instinct would drag us into anger, fear, or shame. Dichotomy of control. The first and central principle is the dichotomy of control. You cannot control the voice of another. You cannot decide whether they will shout, whisper, or stay silent. That belongs to them. What you can control is your judgment, your choice, and your response. Marcus Aurelius repeated this often. If peace depends on what another says or does, then you have placed freedom in their hands. But if peace depends on the state of your own mind, you remain free regardless of their volume. This principle forces a hard question. When yelled at, do I hand over calm to another or keep it under my command? If I need silence from others to be steady, I will never be steady. But if I need only my own discipline, then I carry peace wherever I go. Seeing the offender as ignorant rather than evil. The second principle reshapes how we see the one who yells. Marcus wrote that those who err act out of ignorance, not malice. The person who shouts may be trapped in anger, fear, or misunderstanding. They may not intend harm but be overcome by passions they cannot master. If we see them as evil, resentment grows. We want to strike back, to punish, to restore balance by force. But if we see them as ignorant, as someone stumbling in darkness rather than scheming with cruelty, our anger softens. We recognize their outburst as weakness rather than strength. This shift prevents retaliation. It spares us from being pulled into the same blindness. The impartial observer. A third principle is training the mind to act as an impartial observer. Instead of fusing with the event, we step back. We watch. Here is a person shouting. Here is my body tensing. Here is my urge to reply in kind. By observing, we create a gap between stimulus and response. That gap is where freedom lies. Without it, we react automatically, echoing the anger thrown at us. With it, we gain the power to choose. We may speak with calm or remain silent with strength, but either way we act from reason rather than impulse. This habit of observation turns shouting from a command into a test, a chance to practice self-mastery. Virtue as the only good. The final principle is the most important. Virtue is the only true good. Shouting cannot stain virtue. A person may yell unjustly, but your integrity remains untouched unless you yield to anger. Wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, these are not endangered by noise. If you act with wisdom, you pause and reflect. If you act with justice, you respond fairly, not vengefully. If you act with courage, you face the noise without fear. If you act with temperance, you restrain the urge to lash out. The virtues become shields. They ensure that even in the storm of raised voices, you remain aligned with what matters most. Calm as a way of being. Taken together, these principles form more than a strategy. They build a framework where calm is not performance but identity. It is not about appearing unaffected for pride's sake, but about truly being steady because nothing essential has been harmed. When Marcus wrote that external things cannot touch the soul, he did not mean we feel nothing. We may still hear the shout, feel the heart race, notice the tension in our muscles, but beneath those reactions lies a deeper layer, the part of us that chooses, and that part is free. By practicing the dichotomy of control, we stop surrendering peace to others. By seeing offenders as ignorant, we release hatred. By observing impartially, we create space to act wisely. By holding virtue as the only good, we ensure our dignity cannot be stripped away. Together, these principles remind us that calm is not an act for others. It is a condition of the soul, preserved by discipline and renewed in trial. The world may shout, but the mind can remain steady. This leads to the next step: how to turn these principles into practice so they move from words on a page to habits in daily life. From here, we turn to the lessons and exercises through which Stoicism becomes action. How can one embody this Stoic calm? Several lessons emerge. These are not rules to recite once and forget, but habits to be built through repetition until they become second nature. Calm is not achieved by chance, it is trained into character. Pause before replying. A raised voice is a test. The impulse is to answer immediately, to meet noise with noise. But Stoic discipline begins with pause. Count the breath. 1, 2, 3. A few seconds create distance between stimulus and response. In that pause lies freedom. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to wait before reacting, to let the first impression fade so judgment could be made calmly. By pausing, we refuse to be ruled by another's anger. The pause is not silence out of fear, but silence out of strength. It signals to the mind, I am not a slave to impulse. I will answer if I choose when reason has returned. Separate fact from judgment. The next lesson is to separate what happened from what we tell ourselves about it. Fact: a person yelled. Judgment: I am humiliated. The first is neutral, the second is optional. Most of our suffering comes not from the event, but from the meaning we attach. This separation is hard because the mind fuses fact and judgment so quickly we hardly notice. But with practice, the distinction grows clear. When insult is thrown, think. Here are words, spoken loudly. Whether those words diminish me is for me to decide. By holding to fact and questioning judgment, we disarm much of the sting. Reframe is training. Marcus often saw obstacles as exercises. He wrote that every challenge is material for virtue. Being yelled at becomes practice in patience, endurance, and dignity. Each episode strengthens resilience, like lifting weights strengthens muscle. Instead of resenting the noise, we can use it. Each raised voice becomes a sparring partner in the gym of character. Today I practice calm in the face of shouting. Tomorrow I am stronger when a harder test comes. In this reframing, insult becomes opportunity. Do not mirror anger. Another lesson: do not mirror the anger directed at you. To yell back is to become the same as the aggressor. It is to allow another's lack of discipline to dictate your behavior. Stoicism demands more. It asks us to hold ground without descending into chaos. This does not mean we accept injustice passively. It means we resist being dragged into the blindness that afflicts the one who shouts. By refusing to mirror, we remain distinct, guided by reason rather than contagion. Calmness is not submission, it is command over the self. Respond with clarity, not fire. When the time comes to speak, choose words that are firm yet steady. Anger inflames, clarity calms. A response delivered with measured tone disarms escalation. It shows that composure is stronger than noise. Marcus would remind us that truth spoken without rage is harder to refute. To answer with clarity is to show strength without spectacle. It maintains dignity and often cools the atmosphere, turning conflict into dialogue. Reflect afterward. The final lesson is reflection. After the moment passes, ask, did I keep composure? Where did I falter? What will I do differently next time? This review is not condemnation, but training. Each reflection sharpens awareness, making the next test easier. Reflection turns isolated events into continuous growth. It ensures that the lessons of Stoicism are not lost in the heat of the moment, but are woven into daily life. From practice to character. Through repetition, these practices shift from effort to habit. The pause before reply becomes instinct. The separation of fact from judgment becomes immediate. The reframing of insult as training becomes natural. Calm ceases to be forced. It becomes character. This is the Stoic vision of progress, not perfection in a single moment, but steady improvement across many. Each outburst faced, each temptation resisted, each reflection made adds to the store of resilience. Over time, the mind no longer reaches for calm, it rests there by default. And so the question deepens. Why is this way not only useful for the individual, but necessary for society? To answer, we must turn to the modern world and see why Stoicism offers a path suited not just to personal growth, but to collective survival. Modern life is loud. Workplaces thrive on pressure. Families strain under expectations. Public spaces echo with conflict. Voices rise not because humanity is worse, but because stress runs higher, speed accelerates, and patience thins. We are surrounded by demands, emails, deadlines, bills, disputes that make tempers shorter and reactions sharper. Noise has become the background of daily existence. Calm as survival. In such an environment, calm is not luxury, it is survival. To live without Stoicism is to be dragged by every shout, every criticism, every insult. The untrained mind becomes a leaf in the wind, thrown around by each wave of noise. To live with Stoicism, by contrast, is to hold ground amid turbulence. It means refusing to give control of one's inner state to external clamor. Calm becomes the anchor in waters that never stop moving. Timeless strength. Stoicism's strength today lies in its timelessness. Unlike methods that demand escape or denial, Stoicism requires no withdrawal from life. It does not call us to abandon work, family, or society. It simply trains the mind to distinguish what can and cannot be controlled, to see anger for what it is, an inner fire that burns the bearer more than the target. The raised voice may wound for a moment, but the deeper harm falls on the one consumed by rage. By refusing to mirror their fury, we avoid carrying the same burden. Influence beyond the self. Practicing Stoic calm protects individual peace, but its reach extends further. Human beings mirror one another. One angry voice provokes another. One calm presence steadies many. In offices, a single person who responds with clarity rather than fire can change the direction of a meeting. Others lower their tone because escalation finds no fuel. In families, one calm presence softens quarrels, showing children and partners that conflict need not dominate the home. In society, calm resists the culture of outrage that thrives on provocation and reaction. Each act of calm becomes an act of resistance. It pushes back against the assumption that shouting wins, that noise equals strength. It demonstrates that steadiness has more force than fury. Over time, this example spreads. What begins as personal practice becomes social influence. Resisting the culture of noise. Modern culture often rewards the loudest voice. Social media amplifies anger, public debate prizes attack over understanding, and daily interactions mirror the same impatience. Without an inner philosophy, we are drawn into this current. Outrage becomes habit, and dignity is forgotten. Stoicism offers an antidote. It does not silence the world, but it teaches us not to be ruled by it. Calm here is not passive retreat. It is active defiance. It is choosing not to be shaped by a culture that equates volume with authority. It is insisting that dignity, patience, and reason still matter. The one who holds composure in noise embodies a form of quiet strength that speaks louder than any shout. From individual to community. Thus, Stoicism is not only the right path for individuals, but also for communities. A society made of calmer individuals is a society less prone to cycles of retaliation. In workplaces, dignity replaces panic. In homes, patience replaces constant quarrel. In public life, reason stands against chaos. Stoicism scales from self to family to society, offering not perfection but direction, a way of living that restores dignity to human interaction. Toward the conclusion. The lesson is clear. In a world where noise is constant, calm must be trained. To live stoically is to live freely, because one no longer depends on the silence of others for peace. This path is demanding, but it is also liberating. For those willing to practice, Stoicism remains as relevant now as when Marcus Aurelius wrote his notes to himself in the midst of pressure and conflict. From here, the natural question arises, what happens if we truly live this way? If calm becomes our steady companion? The answer lies in the conclusion, where we gather the value of Stoicism and consider its role not only in surviving noise, but in shaping a life of dignity, resilience, and meaning. To be yelled at is inevitable, to lose composure is optional. Marcus Aurelius teaches that calm is always within reach, because calm depends not on others, but on the governance of our own mind. When we learn to pause, to reframe, to see yelling as mere sound and not a verdict, we free ourselves from needless torment. The value of preservation. The value of this Stoic approach is immediate, dignity preserved, integrity untouched, peace maintained. To respond with anger is to trade away control. To remain steady is to show that true power is inward. Every moment of calm is a victory over impulse, and every victory builds resilience. In practicing this discipline, we not only protect ourselves, but also model strength for others. Calm spreads by example. One steady response can turn the tide of an entire exchange. Calm as contagion. Human behavior is contagious. Anger sparks anger, but calm has its own power of contagion. In a heated meeting, one composed voice can steady the group. In a household quarrel, one restrained response can soften the conflict. When the Stoic hold steady, others often follow. They see that escalation is not inevitable, that another way is possible. Thus, Stoic calm becomes not only self-defense, but also service to others. The modern need for Stoicism. This is why Stoicism remains vital. The world has not grown quieter, it has grown louder. Workplaces demand more, families feel greater strain, and society moves at a relentless pace. Voices rise not because people are worse, but because pressures are higher. In this climate, philosophy is not a luxury, it is survival. Without it, we are carried by every wave of noise. With it, we anchor ourselves against the tide. Stoicism does not promise a silent world. It promises a steady self in a noisy one. Its strength lies in its refusal to deny reality. It does not say, noise will vanish. It says, noise is beyond control, but your mind is not. By holding to what is within reach, we remain free. Living the practice. To embody this teaching is to live it daily. The raised voice at work becomes a chance to pause and breathe. The sharp words at home become a chance to practice patience. The insult in public becomes a chance to hold dignity. Each instance, though unwelcome, becomes training ground. Over time, composure ceases to be effort. It becomes character. From self to society. And when composure becomes character, its effects move outward. Calm in one person steadies a room, steadies a home, and, by ripple, steadies a community. Stoicism therefore scales. It begins with the individual, but offers healing to the collective. In a society loud with outrage, the calm individual becomes a rare but needed presence. Closing reflection. When we master this, yelling no longer rules us. We rule ourselves. The noise remains, but its power fades. What remains is a self that cannot be forced, a mind that cannot be owned. This is the freedom Marcus Aurelius sought to protect in himself, and it is the freedom still open to us today. If you found these reflections meaningful, support the channel, Sophoria. Share your own experiences of facing anger with calm. Subscribe, like, and ring the bell so this practice can reach more who need it. In a society loud with conflict, may we become the few who live with steady minds, guided by the timeless wisdom of Marcus Aurelius.